It's the week leading up to 3.7 and today I'm here with the full Phainon guide. In this video I'm taking you over everything you do need to know in order to understand and use Phainon, including his kit and eidolons, best Lightcones, best relics, best ornaments, the relic sets you want to run for main stat and substat goals, and then finally some team building ideas. I plan on having a full build guide for every single new and returning character in the 3.7 update. There's already one for the first half entirety, so if you're interested in Cyrene, Hyacine, Castris, and Tribi, all of them already have a guide. You are now watching Phainon, and within the next 2 days there will be one for Cypher and Meta. So Phainon is a physical character following the path of destruction, whose basic attack will deal physical damage based off his attack to a designated enemy. His skill will first gain 2 core flame stacks, then will deal damage based off his attack to one designated enemy, and physical damage to his attack based off adjacent targets as well. His ultimate will allow him to transform into Kozlana. You will then deploy the territory Ruinous Iron Tomb, and when Phainon's ultimate is active, your teammates will be considered departed and will not be able to take action. At the same time, Phainon will also implant physical weakness to everyone on the field for all enemies. Kozlana does not enter his own turn, but rather will have 8 extra turns with the set speed equal to 60% of Kozlana's base speed. When the last of Kozlana's extra turn starts, immediately launches a final hit that will deal physical ultimate damage based off Kozlana's attack that is evenly distributed to all enemies. Phainon's talent is when you do have 12 core flame stacks, you will be able to activate ultimate. You are able to overcap a total of 3 core flame points, meaning you can hold up to 15. Anytime Phainon is a target of a ally's ability, Phainon will gain a core flame point. If the target ability is casted by Phainon's teammates, Phainon's crit damage increases by 30% for 3 turns. That's all for Phainon outside of ultimate. Let's now check out what Phainon does inside ultimate. So his regular attack will first let him gain 2 points of Scourge, then will deal physical damage based off his attack to a designated enemy and physical damage based off his attack to a lesser multiplier amount of his attack to adjacent targets. One of his 2 other attacks is going to be a counter. It allows you to gain Scorch points by an amount equal to enemies currently on the battlefield, and will also allow you to gain a stack of Soul Scorch. Then you will allow every enemy on the field to take action. While you are in the Soul Scorch state, Kozlana will take 75% reduced damage, and after an enemy target attacks or takes action, you gain 1 more Soul Scorch stack. Once all the enemies finally do act, Phainon will launch a counter attack that deals physical damage to all enemies based off 40% of his attack, and additionally deals 4 instances of damage, with each instance dealing physical damage equal to 30% of Kozlana's attack dealt to one random enemy. Once that counter instance does end, Soul Scorch will be dispelled. Each stack of Soul Scorch you did gain during the counter phase, it will increase the damage multiplier of the counter by 20% of the original multiplier value. Damage dealt to the counter attack is considered skill damage, and if Soul Scorch is still active during the start of Kozlana's extra turn, it will immediately launch a counter. And for his biggest attack, the Meteor. First, it dispels every debuff on Kozlana, then will deal physical damage with a massive multiplier equal to a max of 1170% of Kozlana's attack. For every 1 point of Scourge consumed, deals 4 instances of damage, with each instance dealing physical damage equal to 45% of Kozlana's attack to a random enemy, and when you consume 4 stacks, you will additionally increase the physical damage dealt to all enemies based off 450% of Kozlana's attack, which is evenly distributed across all enemies. And then for Kozlana's talent, as it does change when you are in his actual form, when you transform, you immediately gain 4 points of Scourge. If it happens during an ally target's turn, the duration of all the buffs on that target is extended by 1 turn and the current turn ends. Kozlana is completely immune to crowd control debuffs, and will also have 1 enhanced basic attack and 2 enhanced skills, as we've already went through. The first thing I talked about was the enhanced basic attack, and then both the enhanced skills was the counter and the meteor I also talked about. You will also not be able to use ultimate while Kozlana is out. During the transformation, Kozlana will have a 80% increase to attack and 270% increase to max HP. After using an attack, you will restore HP equal to 20% of Kozlana's max HP. When Kozlana receives a killing blow, you will not get knocked down, and instead you will restore HP equal to 25% of max HP and immediately launch the final hit. For every 1 remaining extra turn you do have, the final hit's damage multiplier will decrease by 12.5% of the original multiplier value. And once you do launch the final hit and exit the transformation, all allies' speed will be increased by 15% for 1 turn. For his technique, while Phainon is on the team, max technique points will increase by 3, Using this technique will consume 2 skill points rather than 1, and will also attack all enemies within range. After you enter combat, you will regenerate 25 energy for your team. and will gain 2 Scourge and a skill point. Then deal physical damage equal to 200% of Phainon's attack to every enemy at the start of each wave. If you attack a normal enemy, you'll immediately kill them without entering combat, so think of someone like Acheron as well. For his bonus traces, his A2 will allow him to gain a Core Flame at the start of the battle, and when you exit his transformation, he will gain 3 points of Core Flame. His A4 provides him 45% increased damage for 4 turns anytime he receives healing or a shield from a teammate. You cannot repeatedly trigger it within 1 turn, and energy regeneration effects coming from teammates' abilities will also grant a Core Flame. Think of something like Sunday's ultimate or Wofo's ultimate who actually generate energy. Usually in these unique ultimate cases such as Acheron, Phainon, and so on, it would be useless because they don't function off traditional energy, but Phainon instead will actually be able to convert it to at least a stack of Core Flame. And then his A6, when entering combat or ending transformation, he will gain a 50% increase to attack that stacks up to 2 times. For his Eidolons, his E1 increases the base speed inheritance ratio for his extra turns to 66%, and for every enemy you defeat in that current battle, it will additionally increase the ratio by 1.5% up to a maximum of 84%, and using ultimate will provide him a 50% increase to crit damage for 3 turns. His E2 will increase Kozlana's physical respan by 20%, and when you use Foundation Stardeath Verdict, if you do end up consuming 4 Scourge points, you gain an extra turn. Foundation Stardeath Verdict is the meteor, by the way. When using Calamity Soul Scorch Edict, additionally gains 4 stacks of Soul Scorch. Calamity Soul Scorch Edict is the counter. And his E6 will make it to where his Core Flame now no longer has an upper limit, and when you start battle, he immediately gains 6 stacks of Core Flame. After using the attack from Foundation Stardeath Verdict, aka his meteor, additionally will deal true damage equal to 36% of the total damage dealt in this attack to the enemy target with the highest HP. For Lightcone options, his far and none best one is still his own signature Lightcone, increasing the wearer's base speed by 12, providing 18% defense ignore when the wearer deals damage to an enemy target. After the wearer uses ultimate, gains Blazing Sun, which is removed at the start of the turn. While holding Blazing Sun, increases the wearer's damage dealt by 60%. So the base speed is extremely important. If you guys remember, the actual Kozlana extra turns function off base speed and not actual speed. So stuff like speed boots doesn't actually impact it. Speed buffs don't impact it either. Cerebra buff speed doesn't impact it either. And so this is going to be one of the only ways to get quicker extra turns, which is going to be a base speed increase. So the Lightcone providing that is very important, as it allows Kozlana's extra turns to act quicker. Defense Ignore is also one of the 2 other very good ways to increase Phainon's overall damage. He has a lot of ways to get crit damage, he has a lot of ways to get attack percent, he's kind of loaded on those stats, but Defense Ignore is something he doesn't really have. So it's a free 18% Defense Ignore, which is really good, and if you have other people buffing Defense Ignore or even shredding somewhat, it will become that much stronger. And to top it all off, it's a free 60% damage dealt practically throughout the entirety of Phainon's ultimate. As you see, it does say the Blazing Sun buff is removed at the start of the turn. When you time it correctly and actually have it and you go into ultimate, those are extra turns, not an actual turn, so it doesn't count. So it actually is active throughout the entire ultimate. So a 12 base speed increase, which is the major point of this Lightcone. 18% defense ignore for free is really good, and to top it all off, a 60% increase to damage dealt is why it is still his far and none best option. Unfortunately, still to this day, every option past his signature is still like 30% worse plus. But the next option you would use is Fall of an Aeon. When the wearer attacks, increases their attack by 8%, that stacks up to 4 times, and after breaking an enemy target's weakness, increases damage dealt by 12% for 2 turns, and at S5, it's a 16% increase to attack per stack, and a 24% increase to damage dealt. So this gives you up to a 64% increase to attack, which is really high, and also a free 24% damage dealt when you do break an enemy target weakness. So if you go into ultimate and you haven't actually broken anyone's weakness yet, once you do it, you'll have it throughout the rest. And if you manage to break someone's weakness with Phainon right before, then that much better, because now you won't have any other wasted turns not having the buff. But pretty simple to understand, 64% attack is going to be a pretty good damage increase, and also 24% damage dealt is also nice, which is what makes it another good option to use. Those are the 2 real only options you want to use. Everything else you do use is kind of like not much better or worse than each other. One of them is actually Clara's Lightcone, which provides 24% attack for the wearer. When the wearer defeats an enemy or is hit, immediately restores HP equal to 8% of the wearer's attack, and at the same time the wearer's damage is increased by 24% until the end of their next turn. The effect cannot stack and can trigger 1 time per turn. 24% attack for free is going to be a slight damage increase. It also provides some extra sustainability, which isn't really going to be a problem in Phainon's ultimate unless you are in a very hard endgame such as Anomaly where you potentially could get one shot. There it can kind of help, but it's still not going to do too much to where it matters. But the bit of extra help is nice, and then also free 24% increase to damage that you are able to keep up with how his ultimate does work. So 24% increase to attack, 24% damage, and also a bit of sustainability is why it's a usable option. You can also really use something like Saber's Lightcone as well for 36% increase to crit damage and 40% increase to the wearer's attack. Unfortunately, Phainon does not use energy and wouldn't have 300 energy or over anyway, so you can't get the full effect. But it is a free 36% increase to crit damage at any time. And when you do transform, 40% increase to the wearer's attack. So 40% increase to attack, 36% increase to crit damage is going to be a nice damage jump. You can also use the Battle Pass Lightcone, which does provide 12% increase to crit rate, and also increases skill and ultimate damage by 24%. And at S5, it's 20% crit rate with a 40% increase to skill and ultimate damage. Crit rate is still really nice to get on Phainon because you want to get to as close as 100% as possible, since missing a crit in his transform state is really bad. Skill damage buff is going to be good because his counter and his meteor are both considered skill damage. Unfortunately, this Lightcone doesn't buff his enhanced basic attack at all, and the ultimate damage only impacts the final hit, as that is considered ultimate damage. So that final hit gets buffed, and then your meteor and counter get buffed, so it actually makes it a quite solid option to use anyways. For relic sets, his best in slot is still 4-piece Wave Strider, 2-piece providing 16% crit damage, and 4-piece when the wearer becomes the target of another ally target's ability, gains a stack of help that stacks up to 2 times, and when you have 2 stacks of help, when the wearer uses their ultimate, consumes all help stacks to increase the wearer's attack by 48% for 1 turn. 16% crit damage from the 2-piece is nice, so anytime you do crit, it's just going to do more damage. 4-piece is also really easy to gain, but really easy to lose unless you're Phainon. Phainon's teammates are a bunch of people that target him anyways, if you have Ceredra, Sunday, Bronya, Sparkle, all that kind of characters. So it's very easy to stack up help like practically right away. And if you were anyone else, once you did use ultimate, you'd gain 48% attack, you would lose it really quick, you would just get it for 1 attack. But since Phainon goes into ultimate, where he doesn't gain another turn, but rather 8 extra turns, it actually is going to stay active throughout the entire battle that only expires when the next turn of his starts after the ultimate ends. So very easy to stack up the help stacks, he just needs to be targeted twice. Boom, you have all, and now you have a 48% increase to attack throughout the entire ultimate duration. Very easy to use with Phainon, making it his best in slot, as it also provides 2 stats that are pretty nice for him. Another 4-piece you can use is Scholar. 2-piece is 8% crit rate, and the 4-piece increases damage dealt by skill and ultimate by 20%. After using ultimate, additionally increases damage dealt by next skill by 25%. This time the 2-piece provides crit rate, which is arguably better than crit damage because again, you want to get to as close as 100% crit rate as possible. 4-piece will increase the damage for your counter and your meteor and also your final hit. And when you do use your ultimate, usually always your next time attacking would be the meteor, as you gain forge scored stacks anyways. So that first meteor you are getting is going to have a 25% increase in damage though. Unfortunately, it also doesn't really apply to the enhanced basic attack, so that's a bit of a bummer. But for the counter damage, the meteor damage, and also the final hit damage, it does get an increase, which makes it a usable option. Past that, it is combining 2-piece, 2-piece. Usually you would do 2-piece crit and 2-piece crit, so 2-piece Wave Strider with 2-piece Scholar, or 2-piece World Making Deliver, as they both have crit rate 2 pieces, or you can do 2-piece of any of the crit sets and 2-piece attack percent increasing sets, so Hero set, Wind Soaring set, the Dot set, and also Musketeers, they all have attack percent increased by 12, so those would be the 2 pieces you do use. For Planar Ornaments, his best one by a very small margin, so the 2 I'm going to talk about are very marginally different, but the one he would be using is the Arcadia set, which when the number of allied targets on the field is not equal to 4, for every 1 additional / missing allied target, additionally increases the damage dealt by the wearer and the movement spread by 9% / 12%, stacking up to 4 / 3 times. In this case, Phainon would be the only one on the field when you go into his ultimate. It's only going to be Kozlana. So you are removing 3 people off the field for the most part, and it's just going to be him. So he's the only target, which is able to get the full 12% stacking up to 3 times. So a 36% increase to damage dealt overall. So this is his best in slot, but again, a very small margin, and the marginal difference of total damage is like 1 to 2%. The next one would be Relic Arena. Relic Arena provides 8% crit rate, and when the wearer's crit rate is 70% or higher, damage dealt by basic attack and skill increases by 20%. 8% crit rate is nice, gets you closer to 100%. And now throughout the entire battle, just a free damage dealt increased by 20% for any basic attack and skill sources. So in Phainon's case, in his ultimate, everything will be buffed except his final hit. So again, in total damage, the difference between Arcadia and Rulin is still roughly 1 to 2%. It's really just depending on whatever set you have better stats on. Let's say you had a godlike orb and a godlike rope on Rulin for a long time because it's been in the game since the beginning. And for Arcadia, you don't have too many pieces, maybe you have a decent set. In that case, don't feel any shame to just use Rulin instead. Again, the difference is very, very small. And just, again, use whatever set has the better rolls. For the stats, you want to run for main stats on relics. For the body, you are usually always going to use crit rate, as that is a harder stat to come by and will be the one you want to once again get as close as to 100% as possible. But if you are able to get to 100% crit rate without a crit rate body, or at least very close within 95%, then you can opt to run crit damage. For the feat, this actually does depend on your setup and your situation. Speed setups can actually allow you to get more core flame stacks, and can actually be better in cases where maybe you can't kill in one ultimate. In cases where you can't kill in one ultimate and you need to rebuild your actual stacks, running speed and making a actual -1 setup, as usually on the team is someone like Bronya or Sunday where you can function on a -1 setup. In those cases, speed boots can actually be good. If you are able to kill within the first ultimate of Phainon, running attack percent is always going to be better. And another way you can actually set it up is having his Lightcone, which gives you a bunch of base speed, 12 base speed, which will make Phainon have a total of 106 base speed. If you are able to get 9 to 10 more actual speed rolls on your relics for substats, that can help you reach 115/116 speed, which would mean when you do pop Cerebra buff on Phainon, she gives him 20 speed, making him above breakpoint. In that case, you bring your Sunday or Bronya to 134 speed, and it will be a -1 setup with attack percent boots. So if you are doing that setup with Cerebra, or you are able to kill within the first ultimate, then run attack percent. But if you can't kill within the first ultimate and you need to make a -1 setup with speed, then run speed boots. For the orb, you can run physical damage or attack percent. Physical damage is slightly better, but if you happen to have a really, really good attack percent orb, you can run that instead, but try to get a better physical orb. And for the link up, you want attack percent. For the subsets, first, if you are doing a speed goal, as I was mentioning, such as 115 or 116 with Cerebra buff, or if you're running speed boots and you don't have the Lightcone maybe, and you need to get more speed to hit a threshold, then focus on your actual speed, since you'll actually need to hit a goal for it to matter. So if you're running speed boots, for an example, you'd really just need to get them to 134. Since there's also decimal points in this game, you would just need your Sunday or Bronya to have a decimal lower than the speed. But a common example would be 135 Sunday, 134 Bronya or Sunday. If you're running both Sunday and Bronya, then you would need to run it something like this. Your Phainon would be, I'm just going to throw an example for speed, 140 speed, and then you would need 139 speed Sunday, and then 138 speed Bronya. Sunday's buff lasts longer than a non-E6 Bronya, so that's why you want Bronya to act after. So if you are running a speed boots or you want to get that speed threshold through substats, then focus on that first. Past that would be crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. And same thing applies to the people that are not focusing on speed, then you just focus again on crit rate, crit damage, attack percent. For crit rate, again, get it close as to 100% as possible. That's going to be your utmost goal. Since, once again, missing a crit in his ultimate from the meteor attack is going to be very, very devastating. So getting it to as close as 100% first is going to be a priority. A minimum of 95% in my opinion. And also remember to account for something like Sunday buff as well. Crit damage wise, if you are able to get around 190%, that's going to be great. Even higher than that, that's even better. Attack percent, you can focus on getting it around 2500 or higher. Getting it close to 3000 or above 3000 is ideal. Now for team building ideas. So Phainon team building can change a lot depending on the stats of your account and their builds, I mean their investment Eidolon wise, because someone who can kill within the first ultimate with Phainon, as opposed to someone that has to run maybe 2 or 3 ultimates, will be able to build a lot differently. So I'm going to start with a general team, and I'm also going to start it off with a sustain. So one of his best teammates is Sunday, especially because of all the buffs. The extra core flame you can also get from the energy from his ultimate, and also the crit rate buff, is what makes Sunday so valuable. And then, of course, the action advance and targeting. The next thought would also go to another target character. The best teammate would be Cerebra. Cerebra is overall Phainon's other best teammate, or technically the actual best teammate for him. And then the last slot, if you are needing to run a sustain, in this case, it would usually be the new Dan Heng. Dante is the best in slot sustain for Phainon because he is able to provide good buffs, give him the bondmate stuff, and is able to also refresh shield in Phainon's ultimate. So the most standard team with the sustain would look like this. If you're running sustain this, you would change the last slot. A lot of people would advocate to run another character that can target, but I honestly think running an AoE buffer in this slot is fine, especially if you are, again, able to kill in that first slot. My personal favorite is to run a Tribi, especially if you do have E1 Tribi, because she does have all-type Rest Pendant and also makes enemies take more damage when her ultimate is up, which also, fun fact, applies when Phainon is an ultimate, so that extra vulnerability she does provide is actually active in Phainon's ultimate. You can also throw someone like Cypher. Cypher also works really good here for providing 40% vulnerability. As we do know when she exists, she's able to provide that. And that also, for some reason, applies when Phainon is in ultimate. And if you do attack them before going into Phainon's ultimate, if you have Cypher's Lightcone providing the defense shred, it becomes that much more valuable. And of course, you can sub accordingly. If you don't have Sunday, you can use Bronya or even someone like Sparkle. Sparkle works fine. Bronya also works really good. But in my case, I will just put Sparkle here as an example. If you don't have Cerebro, you can put another targeting character. You can even put someone like RMC, as RMC does have a form of a target. And last thought, again, if you don't have a sustain and you need to run a sustain, and maybe your Donning is taken up right now on a team that needs more, in that case, just use a character that can target somewhat. Fofo can target. You can even use someone like a Venturion who can't target, but still can function enough as a sustain until Phainon goes into ultimate. So for my example, I'm going to use Luotra, since Luotra can actually target. And if you really need another person that can target for sustain this, let's say you can almost kill within the first ultimate, but the sustain is holding you back, you can even use someone like Ting Yun. Ting Yun actually works really good with Phainon as well. And that wraps up the full Phainon guide. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of Star Wars content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.